As I mentioned before, tarantulas are from the New World and Old World tropics, so most of them require high temperatures, usually around the 75 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, some things you want to avoid when caring for tarantulas: you don't want to use basking lights or heat lamps that are often used for reptiles. This can dry out their enclosure. It can also make it too hot if there is no air movement moving through the cage, so you don't want to bake your tarantula. Instead, I keep my tarantulas in a rather warm room. In the breeding room, in the reptile room where I keep these guys, it stays at a pretty constant 80 degrees. That is your best choice. If you do not have a reptile room, you can use under the tank heaters that actually stick to the bottom of your tank, will heat the substrate and thus keeping the tarantula warm. You can also use UVB bulbs, which are fluorescent lights. Don't give off a lot of heat, but they give off a little bit of heat, and they also create a nice ambient light. As I mentioned before, it's not always a good idea to handle your tarantula. They're very fragile animals, and if you happen to drop them, they could potentially get very badly hurt or even die from a small fall. Now, if you have to pick up your tarantula, here's how you do it. Cup them so they stop moving, so they feel more secure, and then very gently place your fingers between their second and third leg. Apply a little bit of pressure and pick them up off the substrate. Then you can very gently place them into your hand. Now, I have an aggressive species right here, and I will show you how to maneuver a more aggressive species of tarantula. This is called a Brazilian white-knee tarantula. It's only a baby, believe it or not. It's only a little bit over a year old. Now, for a more aggressive species, I prefer to use another container, such as this small deli cup right here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to push her back a little bit, put the cup in front of her. You can see she's already kicking hair off her abdomen for defense, and very gently maneuver her into the cup. Now, if she was rearing up and trying to strike at me, you could use something like a pencil or a piece of paper or just something else besides your finger to kind of push her into the cup, because tarantula bites do hurt. They feel like a bee sting. Generally, they will not send you to the hospital unless you're allergic to their venom. Now, if you purchase a baby tarantula, or often they're referred to as slings, if you buy a sling, the best place to keep them in is a small deli container just like this. Now, some tarantulas, larger species like this, can easily be kept in a small shoebox. In fact, some tarantulas prefer smaller enclosures. If you put a tarantula in an enclosure that's too large, quite often they'll feel insecure and not eat. So you want to create a small enclosure, or if you put them in an enclosure that's a little bit larger, you want to make a lot of hiding spaces so the spider feels safe and non-threatened. It needs to be able to hide at all times. It needs a place or a burrow to hide in. Now, shoe boxes like this are good if you keep a lot of spiders. They're easily stackable. They don't take up a lot of space. But for those of you that want to show your tarantula off, you can build a nice display cage. You can use a 10-gallon tank. Some larger species, such as the Brazilian bird-eating spiders, require a larger tank, such as a 20-gallon. And if you have any arboreal species, such as the pink-toed tarantulas, then you might want an enclosure that's a little bit higher. I prefer to use a 10 or 20-gallon high tank. And make sure you put in a lot of branches for them to climb on. There's a lot of different substrates you can use for your tarantula's terrarium. The substrate I prefer to use is coconut fiber mulch. It retains a lot of humidity, and for the species such as the Chaco golden-knee tarantula, a little bit of humidity goes a long way for this tarantula. It helps actually the tarantula breathe and keep its lungs nice and clean, keeps them open. Now, other tarantula breeders will use a coconut fiber peat moss mixture. Things you don't want to use, you do not want to use cedar shavings. Cedar has oils in it that can actually be toxic and kill your tarantula. Also, you want to use a substrate that they can burrow in. So keep this coconut fiber, keep it somewhat damp and compactable. So when you grab it, you squeeze it, it clumps together. So the tarantula can dig freely into substrate and not have to worry about it collapsing on top of it. Now, as far as decor goes, you definitely want a hide box for your tarantula if you keep them in a larger aquarium. If you keep them in a shoe box, you really don't need that because this shoe box is their burrow. They feel nice and secure in it. But if you have them in a larger aquarium, a larger terrarium, you want to use a hide box so they can go in there and feel secure. For those arboreal tarantulas, such as the pink-toed tarantulas, you want to create some climbing space. You can put in some driftwood or branches or fake vines as well. All spiders are carnivores and therefore prefer to eat meat. Now, tarantulas prefer to eat live foods, so you have to supply them with a lot of different varieties of live, smaller foods. Now, what I prefer to feed my tarantulas are these guys right here. These are spotted roaches. Here is a female, and here is a male. The male actually has wings. The female has little tiny wing buds right there. These guys breed very, very easily, and if you get a colony of them going, you'll have a constant supply of food. Here is a nymph right here for your smaller tarantulas, and they even get smaller than this if you have some slings to feed as well. They have a high meat ratio compared to their shell, so they are a great food source for your tarantulas. If you do not have small cockroaches to feed, you can go with your basic tarantula food, which of course is crickets. Crickets are fairly easy to keep, but why they don't breed a lot of crickets is because they don't live as long as these roaches. They don't breed as quickly, and also crickets tend to smell pretty bad. So if you're going to breed an insect, I highly recommend trying to breed these spotted roaches. A lot easier to breed than these crickets, and they last a lot longer. Also, you can always go with mealworms. This is called a superworm, and of course they're not real worms at all. In fact, these are beetle grubs. Some people will feed their larger tarantulas mice. I don't recommend feeding full-grown mice because a full-grown mouse has sharp teeth. It can defend itself very well, actually bite and kill your tarantula. If you're going to feed your large tarantula a mouse, feed it a smaller mouse, a pinky, or a fuzzy, something that cannot fight back.